Well, welcome to a new Dave's Workshop Tours video. This time I'm at Grand Tourer in Melbourne's north, and as you can tell by the colours behind me, it's all about the blue oval, but of a special Australian kind. Let's go inside and see what they're up to. Okay, David, thanks very much for having us along today. Tell me a little bit about the business.
Business has been around for 30 odd years, specialises in restoring older Falcon, mainly GTs, but we do look after other models, GSs, Fairmonts, etc. Anything from general maintenance work to full concourse restorations and everything in between.
And the business is known amongst the GT community as producing some of the best work out there, I believe.
We believe so. That's really for others to judge, but the company's probably one of the original companies around that started specialising in these vehicles, so there's a lot of history and experience within the place. Dan McLeese has been around and been in the scene for a very long time and is recognised as being one of the high-end restorers in the country. Started his apprenticeship here under Neil Thompson when Neil first had the business, but the business continues to grow and evolve. Closed down there for a while, unfortunately, when Neil passed away, but was fired up again by one of Neil's friends, Dick Savvy, and a business partner of his. And yeah, we've been open again for quite a few years and plenty of work on the go and plenty of more work coming.
Great stuff. So the viewers are going to be particularly taken by a model over in the corner there. Do you want to show us that one?
Orange XB coupe. Come and have a look.
Lovely. Okay, David, tell us about this model behind you.
So it's a 75 XB coupe. It's a later build, what's known as a pollution upgrade car. We're doing a full restoration on the car. The customer arranged his own bodywork, which has been a very nice high-end job. Car came to us in pieces, which is always a challenge because then we've got to sort through all the customer's pieces rather than assessing it as we dismantle it. It's well and truly on the way to being finished. We're not far off fitting up the engine, dashboard and glass, front rear glass. The engine is a high horsepower build. It's an aftermarket block, alloy heads, intake manifold, and it'll be comfortably over 600 horsepower and 600 foot-pound of torque. Yeah, and it's coming together very nicely.
And cars that come to you in parts, part done and what have you, is there a bit of assessment of that before you take on the build?
Yeah, look, it can end up costing the customer more because in a lot of instances we've got to sort through the parts, work out what's original, what needs to be replaced, general condition, how original those components are. Whereas if we're dismantling the car, we can assess it, strip it, sort components as we go. But in a lot of instances, parts are just lumbered into boxes by their owners, and there's a fair amount of time in going through all of that. So, not to say that it can't be done, but it's just it makes it a longer process. So,
have you ever refused a job?
No. It's people's passion, and we get it, and we're passionate about building the cars as well. So we try and work in tandem with them and understand what their capacities are and what their vision is for the car, what their understanding and knowledge is of what they've got. But yeah, the general thing is that they're as passionate as we are, and we try and help them realise their dream.
And so, take us around this car.
It was a very good condition original car. I believe it was actually, its history is that it was actually an ex-Ford Motor Company engineering test car. It had a couple of quirky things on it that we discovered and had the owner point out to us that were a little bit unusual. One of the things was that it looked like it had been fitted from the factory with a rear sway bar, which this model never had from original. It had some decals on the windows to say that it was a Ford engineering car. So the car was in very good original condition, but the owner just wanted to take it to a higher level. So yeah, that's what we've done, and we've got it well and truly on the way of going back together. We're, like, as I mentioned before, we're almost ready to put the engine in, which is that engine right there, which is, it's quite a high horsepower engine, but it's been built up and dressed to look very much like the original motor. It's got air conditioning and power steering as a couple of its options.
So what sort of power will it have?
So the engine is made up of aftermarket components, so it's got what they call an arrows block, so it allows it to be taken out to, I think it's over 430 cubes. Customer organised his own engine build in this instance. It's got what's known as Scott Cook heads, alloy heads and intake manifold, and it'll be comfortably over 600 horsepower and it's around 600 foot-pound of torque, so that should be more than capable of turning the 15x7 globe wheels. Customer has the original motor for the car, but we've built this up and dressed it to look like the original motor. It'll have an original air cleaner on it as well. It's a manual car, so top loader 4-speed, and that's been built up to cope with the extra power, so it's got a few heavy duty components in it, and it'll obviously have a performance clutch as well. So yeah, it should get up and boogie without too much trouble.
There's a particular interest in this model itself due to its starring appearance in a certain film.
Yeah, well, coupes are always recognised globally because of the Mad Max film, yeah, coupes have certainly gone up in value immensely because of the exposure globally. Coupes are also a harder car to restore because of some of the unique components, but also from a bodywork point of view, they don't seem to have survived as well as the sedans. So there's a lot of specialised work required to bring a coupe back up to the standard that these cars demand these days.
Were they more complicated build?
Look, they probably would have been, but they tend to suffer a lot more from rust and just generally a lot of them didn't survive the wear and tear like a sedan did, particularly around the rear quarters and the back window and the boot area. So, you know, now that these cars have come on in value so much, they demand high quality bodywork to realise the potential from an investment point of view, because if you cut corners on them, they just don't survive or don't have the longevity in the bodywork, and because it costs so much these days, you've really got to get it done by the right people. And we partner up, we make sure we partner up with a lot of specialist panel beaters because of that reason.
And what was actually done in-house here? What is your specialism? What are you actually known for?
So I suppose you could summarise it as attention to detail in the build, but from the start of the process, it's recognising what the car is, dismantling it, assessing everything as you go, restoring it to the best we can with the components that are available, identifying what it is the customer wants, whether he wants a high-end driver or whether we're doing a concourse restoration, because that'll have two different guidelines in regards to sourcing parts and attention to detail, and how much reproduction parts you do or don't use in the build, subject to availability. But probably, yeah, attention to detail is probably the key comment for us throughout the whole build. As previously mentioned, we don't do any of our own bodywork in-house, but we partner up with people that we believe have got the right skill set, and we work in tandem with them to make sure that the bodywork is done how we want it, and that can be everything as simple as how you apply the seam sealer, how much overspray it's got on it, the finish on the paint. Yeah, so look, at the end of the day, we'll try and meet the customer's guidelines and expectation as what his vision for the car is, but we'll try and guide them also as to what the car was in the day when it was built new across the road at Ford. But things like, from a paintwork point of view, we're not building cars to necessarily go to the summer nats. We're building cars to look like they just came off the production line at Ford on a Wednesday afternoon. So it's very challenging to get an extremely high quality job, but dumb down the finish so it looks like it's a mass produced product. So we're not trying to build high-end show cars as such, we're trying to build cars that look like brand new mass produced cars.
The panel gaps and such forth coming out on a Wednesday afternoon in Campbellfield, you know, they're not going to be up there like something coming out, the 3mm gaps coming out of Stuttgart or something like that.
No, they're not Audis. So we want consistent, high quality panel work, and we want the gaps and panel alignment to be very good. But once again, Dan's keen eye, we try to make it look like it's a factory build rather than a show car build. Now, not to say that, you know, if a customer's got certain requirements that they want us to try and achieve, at the end of the day, it's his car or her car, and we'll do our best to meet their expectations, but we'll also try and guide them a little bit along the way as to where they should go with the car to maintain its investment value, I suppose. The bodywork is the foundation of the car, and if you haven't got that right, the car's never right.
Great stuff. Okay, do you want to show us around any particular detail on this
Yeah,
car?
sure, by all means. So the boot on this car is pretty much finished. We've got to put the boot mat in yet, but just a little attention to detail items. We've run with a reproduction pollution tank on this car. It's very hard to restore the original tanks and get them back to a factory type look because they were galvanised, and the very hard to find a paint that replicates that look, and the reproduction tanks are pretty high quality, so it gives the whole boot area of the car and the underneath of the car a nice fresh look. Just simple things like new boot masonites on either side of the chassis rails, wiring loom run in the right place and taped down as per factory, rubber joiners for the tank with the for the filler neck with the right markings on it. It gets back to that attention to detail thing. You're not trying to build a show car and have things hidden away or looking super shiny or perfect. We're trying to make them look like as they were when they left the factory. So yeah, apart from a boot mat and the spare wheel, the boot's pretty much finished. The rear bumpers and tail lights are in. So exterior wise, apart from the fuel cap and some glass, the car's very close to being finished.
David, one thing I didn't ask you when we talked about paint was the name of this colour. It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it's known as Tango. There's also another orange on XBs, which was burnt orange, which was a little bit deeper and darker and slight hint of brown through it.
Right, okay, what have we got going on inside?
So this car is a factory aircon car. So we've basically built up the inside of the car on the firewall prior to the dash being fitted, which will go in soon. So heater boxes back in, pedal boxes in, main wiring harness has been run, speedo cable. It's not far off having the dash fitted up. So all of the aircon heater boxes has been refurbished and serviced, and make sure that all the wiring circuits work correctly and vacuum actuators are working. All the flaps for the ducting inside the heater box and vent ducting.
It was a few weeks later before I got the call that not only was the glass going in, but also a complete new drivetrain and dash to follow. This alongside a load of activity brewing on the XA beside us as well. In fact, a full tour of the XA is coming up in episode 2 of our visit to Grand Tourer, which is as good a time as any to remind you to please like, subscribe, share and hit that bell to make sure you are notified when the episode is uploaded. And if you like what you see, please leave a comment. What cars you had, longed for or wished you'd never let go. Tell us your stories below. Now back to the action. So Dan, how many of these installs do you think you've done down the years?
Oh, I've lost count. There's been so many. A few hundred, I'd say, easily.
Just on GTs?
Yeah, easily. Yeah, plus all the mechanical work and stuff.
Is there anything in particular you have to watch out for these that presents any problems?
The main thing is the right-hand pipes going in the car with the steering box. It's always an issue on the Falcons. They're very tight. XA, XB are a little bit easier. They've got a little bit more clearance. They're wider in between the towers, so that's one good thing. XW, XY, especially with power steering and all the stuff, they're tight on the headers. A lot of guys will put them in with the transmission as well, but on these cars, seeing they're so highly restored, we don't want to risk scratching anything. So we disassemble the back end off the motor and then we'll drop it in, and from underneath we'll put the full running gear in. We lay it all out, make sure we've got all the nuts, bolts, fasteners, hardware, all ready to go, so there's no hold-ups. The boys are just prepping some stuff now and ready to go in.
Cool. Okay, look forward to it. No issues there.
No issues, straight in the hole, and yeah, it's all good, no scratches, that's the main thing.